name's Eamon Castles. Joining me today is Bruce Velez and Elie Deglaoui. How are we doing today, boys? Today we're going to be unveiling our playoff brackets. Excited to get into this. So how are you boys doing today?
I'm doing good, and I'm excited to be on here. Thank you, Eamon, for having us on. It's going to be a fun time.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's get into our playoff brackets. I'm going to start sharing my screen and so you guys can follow along. And yeah, let's get into it first. First matchup we're going to be talking about is the Oklahoma City Thunder against either the Memphis Grizzlies or the Dallas Mavericks, depending on how tonight's games play out. Either way, I don't think it will be too much of a challenge for the Thunder. They've just been such a dominant team. They won nearly 70 games, finishing the season with 68 wins, and then they have the MVP frontrunner in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I think this should be a pretty easy matchup for the Thunder either way. Mavericks could be a little bit more challenging just because of their front court size, and they do have some experience against the Thunder. However, without Kyrie Irving, I don't really see it. They don't really have enough perimeter creation, and this Thunder team is just so dominant, and they've been so elite all year. I don't really see any 8 seed giving them a challenge. So I do think this will be my first sweep, potentially my only sweep of the first round. There could be some close games, especially if the Mavericks get in there, or even if the Grizzlies could get in there. Maybe they'll give the Thunder one or two close games, but I think this will be kind of similar to last year where we saw the Thunder sweep the Pelicans. I think this defense, especially this year, has just really leveled up, and they've been incredibly dominant. They've been the number one defense by a significant margin all season long, and that combined with just how great Shea's been and really how deep this team is, I don't see a way where they lose this series or where it's really close in any way.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Thunder are going to take care of whoever they do play in this series, and I think that we kind of mentioned that with these 8 teams, I don't really see them upsetting this one seed here in the Thunder. The Thunder defense is just too overpowered. I think that a matchup versus the Grizzlies would be a little bit more interesting, and I think that they will win. So I'm going to say that I think it will go 5 because I think that Grizzlies team will have a good offensive game together at home. They do have the size to combat with some of those guys as well in OKC and Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. But I do think, like you mentioned, the Thunder are just a little bit too overpowered with their 60-win season, and they're going to continue to roll on into the second round.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is going to be a pretty easy series for OKC, no matter who they're up against. I think Dallas and Memphis both pose as I wouldn't say threats to them, but they could both bring a challenge. I could see both teams winning a game or two, but I still think OKC's got it pretty easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce, do you want to start us off with our next series? We got Nuggets and Clippers.
Awesome. Yep. So the next series is going to be the Nuggets and the Clippers here. And I think this is one of the better series here in the playoffs. Obviously, the 4 or 5 matchup is going to be a close one, but you've seen the Clippers have a great statistical season this year, really solid on the defensive side. James Harden has been really solid as a shot creator for this Clippers squad. And you've seen the Nuggets have a little bit of a fall from grace. Obviously, still have Nikola Jokic, one of the top player, I think, in the NBA in that MVP race. He's absolutely dominant, putting on some great shows this season. But they do have some injuries with some of their supporting cast, and I think that's what's going to come into play with this series. A lot of people always take the Clippers over the and in these playoffs and usually get burned, and I might get be burned with them as well. But I'm going to be going with the Clippers. I think it's going to go 7 though, and I think we're going to see a lot of these close 7 to 6 game series. And I think that the one thing that's going to maybe hurt the Denver Nuggets, similar to what we saw in their series versus the Minnesota Timberwolves last playoffs, was the supporting cast struggling when Nikola Jokic is dominating.
Yeah, I feel like this is I think going to be a very close series. Obviously, a 4 and 5 seed on its own is going to be a very close series. I could see this going both ways. Both teams have advantages and disadvantages in this series. Uh, I actually saw a stat that after the trade deadline, the Clippers have the fourth best net rating in the NBA, only behind the Celtics, Thunder, and Cavaliers. So they're definitely not a team to just kind of overlook. I think the Nuggets having home court advantage and the Nuggets obviously having Jokic, which the Clippers don't have, will make things uh, pretty challenging for the Clippers. I could see it going both ways, but I think it should be a good series no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is definitely one of the toughest, if not the toughest series for me to predict. I sort of debated this all week once the brackets came out. I didn't know which way I was leaning. ultimately, I sort of defaulted to the Nuggets have the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, and I'm not going to bet against him. So I'm going to go Nuggets in seven. I do think this is going to be a very deep series, competitive games throughout, and I just lean Nuggets based off the fact that they have Jokic, who's the best player in the world, and I don't fully trust this Clippers team as great as they have been, to your guys' points about how they finished the season, and they were really one of the three or four best teams towards the end of the season. I just don't know if I can trust Harden, given his sort of playoff history of really dropping his level of play, and then Kawhi obviously with the injuries. However, in a vacuum, I really do like how this Clippers team matches up with the Nuggets with how great their defense has been. I think this could be a rough series for a guy like Jamal Murray, just with how many good perimeter and wing defenders they have to throw at him. But at the same time, when you have Jokic, I don't think you can really ever be counted out of a series, and I'm always sort of going to default to who the best player in the series is. And this Nuggets team still has so much playoff experience together with that core of guys, so I'm going to lean Nuggets in seven. But yeah, I think this one could really go either way.
I agree. I think both of those that series is a true like 50-50 toss up when you look at it. And I feel like when we get into the other 4-5 matchup as well, it's kind of the same thing as well.
100%.
All right, do you want to kick it off with Lakers Timberwolves, Elie?
Yes, I do. Once I figure out how this works. All right, I think I got it. We good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So Lakers Timberwolves, I thought about this one a lot too. Um, I do see that Lakers are picked by 88% of fans. I feel like the probability is not that high that the Lakers are going to win this series. I think the problem with Minnesota was they kind of had a pretty big rough patch during the year, and that made their record fall, that made them fall in the standings. And so I think when people look at this Timberwolves team, and obviously their team is different now compared to last year, they don't have Karl Anthony Towns anymore. I get all that. But the Timberwolves are still a fantastic team. Anthony Edwards is still one of the top players in the NBA, and I know people love to clown on him, people love to make fun of him, but Rudy Gobert is the reigning defensive player of the year for a reason. All that said, I still got the Lakers. I'm gonna go 6 games. I feel like I cannot doubt LeBron and Luca together in the same on the same team in their first playoff series, and they got home court advantage. So I'm going with the Lakers. I could see Minnesota winning this. It wouldn't surprise me too much, but I got the Lakers in 6.
Yep. I can definitely respect that. Sort of like you were saying, once the series came out, I was really going back and forth. But I sort of landed at the same point that you did, and I'm going to give the edge to the Lakers. I think Timberwolves, they do have a really incredible defense. They have a lot of size, a lot of length, so that could be challenging for the Lakers a little bit. But at the same time, one thing I really value, and it's going to be a common theme with all of my picks, is shot creation in the playoffs. And when you look at this Lakers team and LeBron James and Luka Doncic, I don't know how you can sort of match up with that from a shot creation and playmaking standpoint, especially with the Timberwolves. Their second option is Julius Randle, who really hasn't proven himself in the playoffs. So I just have a really hard time betting against the Lakers and their experience in this one. And I have the same pick as you, Lakers in six, for really that reason. I think it's just tough to go against that Lakers top two. And I don't know if I can trust Randall or really any of the other Timberwolves guys, unfortunately, but I do think they're going to give them a very competitive series. And I think we're going to have a ton of close games, and it's really going to go down to the wire. I mean, we saw what Ant can do in the playoffs, but I think it's just going to be a little bit too much on Ant, and the Lakers just have more to balance it out.
Yeah, I would agree with both you guys. I think when you look at LeBron and Luca in the playoffs, they're just two of the best creators and the guys that are just gonna give the ball to trust in to take you to that next step. And obviously the Timberwolves have that in Anthony Edwards as well. And I think the size of and the length that you guys mentioned with their defense is going to be tough for the Lakers to kind of match up with obviously having not even just Julius Randle down low, Rudy Gobert, but also you have Naz Reid. You also have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's going to be a pretty solid guard playing on Luka Doncic and playing on Austin Reeves. My boy Shiv's in the comment section. He's talking about who's going to be guarding Ant on LA, and that's another thing as well that I see being a problem for the Los Angeles Lakers. But unfortunately, like for Shiv, I'm going to be going with you guys and my brother who likes the Timberwolves. I'm going to be going Lakers. I'm going to be going in 7. I think that the Timberwolves will push it a little bit further than maybe you guys think to 6. but I do think that LeBron James and Luka Doncic are just two of those guys that are just prepared in these moments to get it there. We saw Luka get to the finals last year. We know LeBron wants to get on another finals trip, and I think this Lakers team is going to be hungry for that vengeance.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is a good question that Shiv brought up in the chat. Who's going to be guarding Ant? I do think it'll be more so of that collective effort, and they're going to double team him. They're going to really trap him a lot. So I think that's where it gets difficult for Ant. We've seen sort of this year how he doesn't respond the best to double teams necessarily, and how that can sort of be a problem. I will say if you have to point out one player who can really match up with him nicely, I think it's Dorian Finney-Smith, who's been one of the more impressive defenders in the league to me. He didn't make one of my all defensive teams, but I definitely considered him. The versatility he has, the length, the size, how he can really match up with anyone. His athleticism, really disruptive defender. So I would point to him. I think he's going to be crucial in this series. And then Rui Hachimura, just probably not the best matchup necessarily, but with his size, I think he can also give Ant some trouble. And I think we've seen with this Lakers team, they did have for a period of time they had the best defense in the NBA. Ended up finishing 17th ranked defense in the season, but for over a month they had the best defense in the NBA, and it's really because they were really able to just blitz so many guys, and really they had a ton of effort, and just their double teams, their size and length really benefited them throughout the second half of the season. So I think that's what we're going to see here in this matchup.
Mhm.
I'd agree with you.
Same.
All right, let's move on to what is probably my favorite series of the first round. That's going to be Warriors Rockets. This is a really fascinating series to me. It's really a contrast in styles when you think about it. The Rockets are this super young team. Warriors are this veteran team with just a ton of experience. Obviously, with the four championships with Curry and Draymond, and then you look at adding a guy like Jimmy Butler to that, who's just one of the most proven playoff risers. This team just has a ton of experience, but at the same time, I do think the Rockets are pretty well equipped to match up with the Warriors. They have a lot of good defenders, super athletic, super versatile team. So I think that can give them challenges. Specifically, Amen Thompson guarding Steph Curry, I think could be challenging for the Warriors. And then they do have a lot of size, which is another thing the Warriors kind of lack. However, at the same time, I'm going to default to the more experienced team and go with the Warriors. I also just think the shot creation, again, going back to that with Curry and Butler, really outweighs the Rockets, which is sort of a scoring by committee team. It depends on the night. They don't really have that traditional go-to guy. So I do think in a playoff setting that is going to really harm them. However, I think the Rockets will make this a really competitive series. I'm going to go six, but I could easily see this one going seven. Same with the Lakers Timberwolves. I did pick that in six, but I could see that one going seven for sure. So I'm going to go Warriors in a really tight 6 game series.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eamon, with the Warriors in six. That's my pick as well for this series. Just be due to the fact, like we've just been talking about, the experience coming in with Golden State. You saw how Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry looked in that play-in game, and that was Steph Curry's first play-in win ever in the tournament. So you have that Batman Robin S type matchup. You have Draymond Green to work down low on some of those guys like Alperen Sengun and Jabari Smith. Like you mentioned, the Rockets do have that size and that length with guys like Tari Eason, Amen Thompson that are really going to disrupt those Warriors shooters. But I think we kind of all realize, even with Ime Udoka and that hardcore defense, this Rockets team kind of needs that offensive scorer to really combat with those guys in Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler in this playoff run. And I don't necessarily know if they have that full-on guy that can be that number one option to drop 25 and 30 every single night for them in this playoffs, which I think is what's going to hinder them this series, and which the Warriors will win.
Yeah, I think Golden State. This is gonna be a good series. I agree with what's been said so far. I said this actually the last time I was on Eamon's podcast. I said this, and I still feel this. If Jimmy Butler is your second best player, like you're in a good spot. Because I know Jimmy Butler's not, you know, peak Jimmy Butler anymore, but he can still contribute, and we're seeing that in Golden State. If Jimmy Butler is your second best player in the playoffs, in Golden State specifically, like that's a dangerous team. If they made the Jimmy Butler trade in December instead of February, I think we're looking at them as the number two or number three seed in the West. That team, Obviously, with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green's having another fantastic season, at least defensively, that's a dangerous team. I also got Golden State in this series. That's not to dismiss what Houston has done. The fact that they're the number two seed in this conference is insane. And that team's got a bright future. I'm going with Golden State on this one for the sole reason that I think Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler in the playoffs is going to give Houston some trouble, and I think it'll be too much for them. I could see Houston winning, but I'm going to go with Golden State.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great point you brought up there about Butler. And if they had acquired him earlier, to your point, I do think they would have been one of those top three seeds. They really have been one of the three best teams in the West since landing him. So I think that will be huge. And just the playoff experience he brings. Also taking the pressure off of Steph Curry, who was really doing everything for the Warriors, has been huge. Jimmy himself has been getting to the line a ton, which is something the Warriors struggled with. So he really makes their offense more complete and versatile in really every way. So I'm really high on this acquisition, especially for the playoffs. And I do think, as you mentioned, they're a little bit underseeded just for that reason. And just with the West being so close, uh, even they could have landed a five seed if something had played out differently within these last few games of the regular season. So I think they're definitely a dangerous playoff team. Any closing thoughts about this series, Bruce?
Yeah, I think just you guys hit it on all notes. Talking about it, the Warriors definitely could have been a top team in this Western Conference, and I think they, like you said, are a little bit underseeded in this matchup. And I think well, we all have it for the second round, but that Lakers Warriors matchup that we'll get into a little bit as well will be definitely a
Mhm.
fun, interesting one to see that rematch, especially now with Jimmy Butler being on that team. But I can kick it off and go to the Cavaliers and the other eight seed here, which we still, once again, have yet to know who is going to be playing. I think it's going to be the Heat beating the Hawks, so I do think be the Cavs versus Heat in a nice little interesting series. But as we all know, Cleveland, 60-win team, very dominant in the regular season, has had Ty Jerome be solid, DeAndre Hunter be a nice late season addition. I think that they'll be able to overpower whatever team they face. I'm going to say in 5 games, just because I do think if the Heat do get in there, they will have one game where they play really solid defensively, and Tyro Hero will go off like we saw versus the Chicago Bulls. But I do say that Cleveland is just too overpowered in this Eastern Conference for the Heat to spark up a couple games with their offense or for Trae Young to go berserk and to steal a series.
Yeah. I also have Cleveland, and I also have Cleveland in five. I'm actually going with Atlanta over
Oh,
Miami, and in a little bit of a bold take. Um, I'm not saying they're going to win the series. I'm not saying that, but I could see Atlanta taking this to 6 or 7 games against Cleveland. I still think Cleveland's a better team. Don't get it twisted. Atlanta plays hard though. Atlanta, let's not forget, Atlanta handed the Cavaliers, I think, 2 consecutive losses in November or December when only Boston had beaten them, something like that. Atlanta, and this is all assuming they win. Obviously, if they
mhm.
don't, then none of this matters. But I think the Hawks play really hard. I think everybody on that team plays their role very well, and Trae Young is a threat. Dyson Daniels is amazing. All that being said, I still got Cleveland in this. They are in a league with who I think most would consider two juggernauts in the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Boston Celtics. And for a long time, for most of the season, the Cavaliers had a better record than both of them. So they're definitely not a team to just kind of brush off to the side. I do have them winning in five as well. Uh, but no matter who they're up against, I think they got the series in however many games it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be another sweep for me. I'm going to go with my second sweep. I mean, sweeps are a little rare, so maybe Hawks or Heat can steal a game. I think I do lean a little bit more towards the Heat in this game tonight. However, it could go either way. I think this Cavs team is just way too talented, and especially if they play Atlanta, I do think Atlanta does play them pretty hard and has a certainly improved team this year in some regards. However, I think without Jalen Johnson, it's going to just be so difficult for Atlanta to really match up with them offensively. And then some of their other front court injuries are really key to where they could get overwhelmed by the double bigs. And then on the Heat side, I think their offense just doesn't have nearly enough to match up with this Cleveland offense, who has been just really a juggernaut all year long. So I don't see this series being very competitive. I'm gonna go with another sweep. I think when we have two teams that have won 60 plus games as the one seeds, I think I'm just gonna sort of respect that and expect them to really take care of business and not be too competitive in these first round matchups with these 8 seeds. So I'm gonna go with another sweep here. All right. Let's move on to Pacers Bucks. Do you want to kick this one off for us, Elie?
I do. I do. I figured it out the last time. I got it again. All right. Pacers Bucks. In my opinion, this is the closest series in the first round because I know we say this about a lot of series. This one could go any direction. It could be any result, and to me, it would all make sense. I think both teams are neck and neck in terms of what they bring to the table. Uh, they both, again, they both have their advantages and disadvantages. The Bucks aren't going to have Damian Lillard for game one. We'll see when, if he does come back during the first round. Indiana's got home court advantage, but they don't have a Giannis on their team, which I think is kind of the main reason people are taking Milwaukee over Indy. So in my opinion, I've got Indy in 7 because they do have home court advantage. They, as we saw last year, they are a very difficult team to eliminate in the playoffs. They made the conference finals last year and are even better this year. And I just think Milwaukee, overall, they're a good defensive team, but they're actually one of the worst transitional defensive teams in the NBA. By far the worst one that's in the playoffs. And the Pacers are one of the highest powered offenses. They have such a fast paced offense. I'm rocking with Indy, but I could see this going both ways.
Definitely. I think you really nailed it there, especially with the transition defense point. I think that's really crucial. Just with the way the Pacers, no pun intended, they really like to push the pace and
Hmm.
they're just super fast. And I think that poses some difficulties for Milwaukee. Rumor is that Damian Lillard is going to return at some point this series. He's been ruled out for game one, but at some point he's going to return. However, at the same time, coming off a blood clot injury, I'm always going to just be concerned about what type of impact he's going to make. I mean, he hasn't
Hmm.
played in over a month, so that's always going to be a little concerning to me. Awesome that he's able to come back, and that's a great story. But at the same time, I don't know what kind of impact he's going to make, and I think Indiana defensively could really give him some troubles, even though they're not necessarily known as this elite defensive team or anything. With Andrew Nemhart, he's an excellent perimeter defender. He has really good size, and I think that can really bother Dame. And then just overall, I think this Pacers team they've really been one of the best teams in the year, or since the new year has flipped. They have a top 5 net rating. So I think that's really crucial, and I think they're going a little bit overlooked. I don't think they can necessarily win the title or anything just because of how loaded the East is with those top 2 teams in the Celtics and Cavs. But at the same time, I think this is a really good team. And when you look at sort of comparing their 3 through 8s, I think Indiana has a better 3 through 8 by far and away. Obviously, Giannis is the best player in the series, but really outside of Giannis, I don't. And Dame, obviously you do trust him, but outside of Giannis, I don't really trust anyone given Dame's injury. I'm really not a fan of the Bucks 3 through 8. I think Giannis will really keep them in the series, and I agree with you. I think it will go 7. It will be super competitive, and it's mainly just based off my respect for Giannis that I think it will even go 7.
Mm.
Because this Bucks team all year, they haven't looked great. They don't have a lot of depth. There's a lot of weaknesses there, and I just lean Indiana for those reasons.
Yeah, I'm going to be leaning Indiana like both of you guys, also in 7. You guys mentioned Giannis being the best player on the court, and that's obviously going to be the case, but it is going to be difficult for that Bucks team, I think, really to push the pace like you guys have mentioned with this Indiana team defensively. You also, I like how we get this, in-season rivalry last season as well, kind of meeting in the playoffs
Mhm.
back-to-back seasons, and specifically in the Central Division, right? You see the Pacers, the Bucks, the Cavs. There were 4 teams that made it, but the playoffs. But at least 3 of them are going to be playing each other in the second round if the Cavs do win. So it will be, a little bit of a gauntlet through their division, which I do like as well, which is makes it a little bit more interesting. I'm really siding with the Pacers here just because, like you mentioned, Eamon, Damian Lillard coming back from this injury. We don't know what game he is even going to be coming back. We don't know what kind of Damian Lillard we're even going to see when he does return. And also, the additions that they really made in the trade deadline for the second half of the season haven't really helped them out in areas that they have needed success. Where I feel like Indiana is maybe one of the most underrated teams in this playoffs, just because a lot of people last season saw them make the Eastern Conference Finals with all the injuries and felt like this team didn't really deserve to be here. Maybe because they're in a smaller market. I feel like a lot of people are also doubting on them as well this season. So I'm going to be going with the Pacers as well in 7 games with that home court advantage.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting and just speaks to Elie's point earlier about how competitive this series is going to be. I think this is interesting that we all picked this series to go 7, and I think we're going to be in for a battle. It's kind of a shame. I saw this is really the NBA TV series. I saw they even had a couple games
Yeah,
on ESPNU, but
yeah,
it's like the NBA. I don't know what we're doing here. I mean, this is a great series, and I know they're two small market teams, obviously, so that factors
mm,
into it. But basketball wise, this should be a really exciting series, and then obviously you have that star powered Giannis. So I'm a little disappointed that it sort of got the short end of the stick in that regard, but nevertheless, a great series, and it's going to be tipping off the playoffs tomorrow at 1, so should be a
mhm.
lot of fun. All right, let's move on to the next series, which is going to be Knicks Pacers. I think this could be somewhat of a trendy upset pick for some people. I know it says Knicks 82%, but I do think some people might be leaning Pistons here just because of the insane season they've had. It's really been one of the best stories in the league, probably the best story in the league. After winning 14 games, they make it to the playoffs for the first time in 6 years or so. I just have a really tough time trusting a team with such little playoff experience. And then outside of Cade, I don't think they have enough shot creation to compete with the Knicks too much. So I'm gonna go Knicks in 6, but probably gonna be closer to 5 than 7 if that makes sense. I do think at the same time though the Pistons could give Brunson some trouble. They have a really good defense, especially on the perimeter. Cade Cunningham is a very underrated defender in his own regard, but I'm really looking at Asar Thompson to really bother Brunson with his size and athleticism. I think that's a tough matchup for Brunson, but at the same time, the rest of the Knicks starting 5 are all really high quality offensive players and sort of playing without Brunson due to that injury that he had for about a month. I think benefited them, especially in a series where he might not be as impactful. I think this is more so a cat series. I'm not the biggest Duran fan in terms of his rim protection. I think that sort of is lacking. Isaiah Stewart's very physical. He's very strong, but at the same time, he's not going to be a guy that can really take Cat totally out of the game, in my opinion. So I'm looking for Cat to have a big series. I do think overall, though, the Pacers' like physicality and just their toughness in general could be challenging for the Knicks. So I think we'll see a bit of a closer series, but I'm going with a 6 game series here. I'd be pretty surprised if the Pacers ended up winning, though. Yeah, what do you guys think about this one?
So I would agree with you. I'm going to go with the Knicks as well, and I feel like this is one of the teams kind of similar to the Rockets, maybe the one upset pick that everyone is kind of looking at in the Eastern Conference, right? Like a lot of people are riding the Pistons due to the fact that they, have had a remarkable season following last year's year as well, adding those shooters, and the Knicks have struggled over this last couple of stretch as well. But I think with the Knicks, right, they have a lot to prove. They have these wing defenders that they can, match up even on Cade Cunningham to shut him down. They got Josh Hart. They have too much size and length, I think, for the scores on the Detroit Pistons. And credit to Tobias Harris and all his stuff that he's been able to do with this Pistons team as well. But I don't think he's going to be able to turn up and be that, second or third star alongside Cade in the playoffs. So I'm going to go Knicks. I'm going to go in 5 versus the Pistons, but I could see it going 6 as well.
Yeah, I had Knicks in 5 too. The Knicks play very well against the teams that, in theory, they're supposed to play very well against. It's those top teams that I think most are concerned about. I do think the Knicks have so much talent, though. Like, I do think the Knicks are a fantastic team on paper. I do think they're going to take care of business against Detroit, but don't get it twisted. The Pistons are still a fantastic team, and all things considered, they where'd Amen go?
I don't know.
Um,
No.
But either way, I think the Pistons are a fun team though, and I could see it going both ways in theory. But I still think the Knicks got it.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, Elie. I think that exactly when you look at the Knicks, like structure and stuff like that with like Tom Thibodeau, I feel like everyone like they're built for this moment too. They've been like working hard with all these guys playing tough in the playoffs, and like they have that mentality of running these shorter lineups, I guess, as well
Mhm.
to combat to prepare for this moment. And I think Eamon brought up the good point as well with like Jalen Duran being on Cat and all these perimeter bigs. I don't think he's gonna be. I think he's gonna be ostracized and taken out. So I think we will see the success come from the Knicks, but don't know where Eamon is at the moment.
Me neither. Guess we're hijacking his podcast, but
Yeah.
but I think the one storyline to follow. I don't even know if you ever realized this. The Pistons haven't won a playoff game since 2008 because they made the playoffs twice since and they got swept both times.
I was gonna say they made it with
So,
Blake Griffin one time. I remember
yep,
that.
yep, they made it. I think the years were 2016 and 20. No, did they make the bubble? They might have. I think it's 2016 and 2020. I might have the years
Okay.
off, but it's something like that. Either way, they've made the playoffs twice since 2008 when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, I think against Boston, and they haven't won a playoff game since. They haven't won a playoff game since how long is that? In 17 years? Like that's a very long time. That's a whole high schooler. That's a whole high schooler now. So that's going to be an interesting story to follow, I think.
Oh, 100%. I can't even imagine being like a Pistons fan growing up in Detroit and having to live with like not making the playoffs for your whole life. And then now this is the first
Right.
time you could potentially see a playoff win since your birth. That must be absolutely crazy. And I'm hoping for them to, they can at least get one of those wins, right? We're hoping for the Pistons fans, like they can get at least a little bit of something out of this season and not at least get swept by the Knicks.
Yeah, I could see them winning a game or two,
Hmm.
100%. Um, do we got to re-invite Eamon back to his own podcast?
I don't know.
Can we? I don't even know if we can. Do we have that option?
We'll have to wait and see.
Have to wait and see.
Let me even see if I can. I don't have a Gmail or anything now. I don't have like anything in my email or anything. Maybe he has the link. Settings.
Hmm.
I don't know. Who is even the host now?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Does it tell? I would assume you, because I think you got in here before I did, but I don't know if it works like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does it say?
No.
No, it
Host.
says we're both guests. It says we're both guests, at least
Yeah.
on my end.
Yeah, that's what I see. I just see studio chat. Host, producers, guest.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're a guest.
The
That's what it says, I think. It says two guests, yeah. I didn't know if his laptop died, maybe?
I don't know, but I'm just confused why I didn't like close out of the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like, why did it just kick him out? Now is that?
I don't know.
Oh, imagine if it was just that his laptop died. Poor guy, man. He's probably freaking out right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say. That's tough. Yeah, because it doesn't even say he's in or anything. It just says one. Yeah. Yeah, we're both guests still.
Yep. So there's really nothing we can do right now.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Unless you want to look back at some of the other series while we're still here and kind of go more into depth while we wait for him.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm with that.
Uh,
One note that I wanted to make actually about the Pacers Bucks series
okay, yeah.
because I'm still going with Indy. I do think I'm because I've said it time and time again. Indiana is probably the most overlooked team in this entire
Hmm.
postseason, and I still think Indiana's going to win. But to give Milwaukee a little bit of an extra like, credit, I guess, is they won their last 8 games before the playoffs. They won their last
Yeah.
8 games to end the season, and they did all of that without Damian Lillard. So I definitely think if they do get him back at some point this series, it will kind of shift the odds in their favor a little bit. I'm still going with Indiana, But I just feel like that's kind of a little interesting tidbit to mention, and I feel like I can't just overlook that fact about a team that has a perennial MVP candidate in Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're clicking at the right time. I mean, I still got Indy, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Bucks do win this one.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, I feel like this is even closer to the Clippers Nuggets series. Like it could really go either way because I feel like with Milwaukee losing in the first round the last couple seasons as well, like Giannis does not want to lose, specifically to Indiana. He might
Right.
make it a mission similar to how it was in the finals when they were down 2-0 to the Suns. Like I'm gonna take over and I'm gonna start to really give it to him. I think, like you mentioned as well, when Lillard got announced that he was going to be brought back this series, I think that also made me question it a little bit more. I felt like maybe if
Mhm.
Lillard wasn't coming back this series, or if we had known that kind of going in, like he's going to be missing the playoffs, I would have been in Pacers probably like six, maybe,
Mhm.
giving them a little bit of an easier path just because with Damian Lillard obviously coming back, you really don't necessarily know like what he's going to be able to bring out, and he could drop back-to-back 30-point games, and there's the icing for the nail in the coffin for the Bucks or for the Pacers, excuse me. But like you said, I truly think he can go 50-50, and I think with like adding Damian Lillard, it adds that like intrigue as well, waiting on the series because
Mhm.
could it be game three? Could it be game five? Is it just game six, game seven? Like that kind of mystery out there as well kind of leads it for like
Right.
like if the Bucks are up 3-1 in the series, they might not even need to bring Dame back or something like that.
Right. I think I think what I'm really interested to see though is if Damian Lillard does come back this series. I mean, I guess we won't know until it's official, but I wonder if he's going to be full go or if they're going to, because I mean, I feel like you can't bring him back and put him on a minutes restriction in the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs because I feel like at that point, like he could be a negative on the court, just
Yep.
not playing full minutes and coming back from the blood clot. Like I'm really curious to see how they play it. I assume Milwaukee's going to play it safe. I would imagine that they're going to prioritize his health and well being before the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
but I really am interested to see just how they take it because there's really no ramping up in the playoffs. Like, we've seen guys come back in the playoffs, and more often than not, it takes them a while to settle in. And for a team like Milwaukee, who is kind of already at a disadvantage being the number 5 seed, I just don't know if they're going to want to do that. But at the same time, it's still Damian Lillard. Like Damian Lillard at half go is still one of the best players in the NBA. So I'm interested to see how they play that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think kind of on the minute restriction, it doesn't really make sense for the Bucks like to do that. I feel like bring him back just full 100% ready to go whenever he's full 100% ready to go, even if that's like delaying him a game is just the smart thing to do, just so that you can get like the best out of him alongside Giannis
Mhm.
Antetokounmpo, because you kind of look at them without Giannis. I know you mentioned they were like on an 8-game winning streak. I wasn't really
Mhm.
watching the Bucks towards the end of the season, but I necessarily don't really know who's like their other offensive pieces that they have been going to. I know like Kevin Porter Jr. has been pretty
Yeah.
solid defensively and doing some stuff, but like I don't know if really like is Kuzma been that guy? Has he really stepped up and delivered, or is like a Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis been able to help them out?
So I know Kuzma. I'm gonna look for the stats real quick. I know Kuzma started to slightly come into his own a
Okay.
little bit towards the last month or so of the season. Uh, I'm sure it's not a coincidence, but basically, right when Damian Lillard went down, his numbers and his usage went up. So I'm sure that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Bobby Portis, because he came back from his was a 25 game suspension, played the last few games of the season. I do have the numbers up right now in his because he came back for 3 games. Um, in his 3 games since coming back, where the Bucks did go 3-0, obviously, he averaged 16.3 points on 50% shooting and 38.5% from beyond the arc. And for an additional bonus, he also recorded or averaged 9.3 rebounds per game and 1.3 steals. So
Oh,
Bobby Portis coming back was also a big help to them. Kyle Kuzma's coming into his own a little bit. So it kind of just feels like a lot of guys are buying into their role a little bit more. I don't know if it's because of the Damian Lillard injury. They all know, hey, we really need to step up now. I don't know if it's because of the timing of the season. It's almost playoff time. Like, we gotta turn it up another level. Maybe it's a combination of both, or maybe it's just a natural gelling because they were pretty active at the trade deadline. Obviously, trading Chris Middleton.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it was a big deal, but trading Marion Beauchamp, and
Yep.
or at least moving on from him. I don't know if they traded him, but at least moving on from him. So they had to take some time to really gel, and uh, it could just be natural chemistry as well.
I was gonna say you mentioned that part as well, just like them gelling. I kind of forgot, obviously, them making so many of those major moves at the deadline, and obviously dealing with injuries to some star players as well, like Damian Lillard, kind of trying to
Mhm.
figure out who's going to be able to take those like load on the offensive side and really figure out who's going to fill in for those roles for them. Another series that I guess we can really talk about as well, one that we got into a little bit, but didn't really like fully talk about, I think, like on the Rockets end with the Warriors. I think they've had like
Mm.
a great season so far, top to bottom. Like it's I think we've mentioned it, but like it's crazy that they are the 2 seed in this stacked Western Conference. Obviously, if a team like the Warriors had made some trades a little bit earlier, if the Lakers obviously didn't get as like had gotten a little bit easier stuff, maybe the center that they had wanted, maybe they'd be a little bit better and higher up as well. But the Rockets, man, with Ime Udoka, we obviously being Celtics fans know what Ime Udoka can do with the
Yep.
team defensively, and he has really had this Rockets team playing phenomenal with guys like Amon Thompson, Tari Eason, and some other guys as well.
Yeah, we saw it a little bit at the end last year. I don't remember
Hmm.
exactly what the situation was, but I remember the Rockets went on a little bit of a streak. Yeah, they went on a little bit of like a hot streak towards the end of the season. They were fighting for, was it the number 10 seed with Golden State or something
Yeah,
like that? And we saw what this team was capable of, and they actually carried that over into this year. And another part of their season that really impresses me is that they had a rough patch in January or February, some point before the All-Star break. They were hitting a rough patch. They fell to maybe the number 5 seed in the West, and they actually stayed resilient, and they moved their way back up to the number 2 seed and ended there. I feel like if it weren't for obviously the Thunder being the number 1 seed and the Lakers being the Lakers and the Warriors being as busy as they were getting Jimmy Butler, like I think if it weren't for so many of these other teams in the West, we would be talking about Houston a lot more, because the fact that they're able to do this with, let's just call it what it is, with not a stacked roster. Like, they
hmm
obviously have talent, 100% they have talent. I think Alperen Şengün is amazing. I think their veterans all buy into their role very well. Amen Thompson, I think, is going to be at least all-star caliber. Like, they have a very nice team, but they don't have an MVP candidate. They don't have, I think, who most would consider a present-day superstar. So the fact that they were still able to power through and be resilient and end up as the number 2 seed is really impressive. And if I were a Rockets fan, I mean, I would be proud of where the team ended right now, going from missing the postseason entirely last year to being the number 2 seed only behind OKC. That's not nothing. That's definitely something to cherish.
100%. You mentioned them having a great win streak at the end of the season, really coming together. I think they won, like similar to the Bucks, a handful of stretch of games towards the end of the season, and just I think they are like similar to the Thunder last year. Like we saw that Thunder team like kind of really make a name for itself with all the young players, and they still don't like. Obviously, Shea's gotten a little bit better. J Dub's gotten a little bit better. They made some moves on the minor edges to fill in some holes, and I
Mhm.
think we're gonna see the Rockets kind of doing that this season, right? Regardless if they lose in the first round or the second round, like you mentioned, they still lack that like superstar guy, I think, right now. And they could get that with, either Amon Thompson, I think, is kind of taking that leap past Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün as that guy who could be the number one option for this team. But I still think they still need that top tier score, like you mentioned, and they will kind of find that after this playoffs because they have so much talent they can kind of move off some of it. They don't need all the talent that they do have specifically for making these deep playoff pushes in the future. But I'm very happy for what they've done this season. And like you said, I think if you're a Rockets fan, even if you lose in the first round, you're not upset. You're excited
Mhm.
for what your team was able to accomplish with Ime Udoka this season, with the rise of Amon Thompson, with Tari Eason also establishing himself as a top tier defender and looking forward to the future of next season and then 2 to 3 seasons after that as well, being able to bring in some top tier guys.
Yeah, absolutely. They got a bright future, and I'm excited to see where they go from here. I think sooner rather than later, we're probably going to be looking at them as potential title contenders. Um, I just kind of clued into the irony that they're up against Golden State in their first postseason back in however many years. Golden State just will not leave them alone
No,
after the conference finals in what was it, 2018, and all those other playoff series they had. They just will not leave them alone. I just think it's so ironic and so funny.
no, I didn't even think of that right now until you said it. Like it just brought me back to sitting in high school talking about the Chris
Yep.
Paul and James Harden. Will they finally beat
Yep.
them? Will they finally beat them? And nope, they
Oh
will not beat
man.
them, man. And it's absolutely tough. I think Rockets, Warriors, even if it, I think in the Western Conference, all these matchups, you look at the teams that are kind of going up against each other. It's good matchups. Obviously, in the West, there's so
Mhm.
many more, I guess, like bigger star names, but across the league, there's so many just like cool, I guess, star names that you can just look at in the matchups wise, like Luca versus Ant. You got obviously Harden and Kawhi versus Jokic. And just the Clippers and Nuggets having those battles across the last couple seasons. The Thunder, if they match up against Ja Morant versus Shea. I know they don't have Kyrie Irving anymore, but Anthony Davis versus and then Mavericks, and from last year's semifinals as well, you got a little bit of a rivalry out east, like we mentioned, Pacers, Bucks, Cavs. Both of those teams, I feel like, give them a little bit of fun. Knicks, Pistons, and then Celtics, Magic. Even the Celtics and the Magic have a little bit of history, even if they haven't really met in the
Mhm.
playoffs. The Celtics and Magic over the last couple of seasons have matched up really well against each other, in which the Magic have been one of the teams that have given the Celtics fits in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually thinking about it. Once it became official that Boston was going up against Orlando, I was like, I remember them meeting multiple times in the playoffs and having some really intense regular season matches. It's kind of crazy to me to think that they haven't met in the playoffs since 2010,
Hmm.
which is crazy to me to think about. It's been 15 years since their last playoff matchup. So this should be a fun one. I mean, obviously, I still got Boston in this one. I did go 5 games. I think the consensus is that this is going to most likely be a sweep. Uh, I just feel like I'm giving the 5 games because I do respect Orlando a lot for the type of season they had. They went through all those injuries to Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, who missed a ton of time. Mo Wagner, who was with the Celtics at one point, once
Hmm.
upon a time, he suffered, I believe, an ACL injury early in the
Yeah.
year, and Jalen Suggs has been out. Like they've gone through so much. Uh, Distress, I guess, during the season, and the fact that they still managed to make their way into the playoffs, and still be one of the best defensive teams in the
Hmm.
NBA is incredible. So I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak a game. I mean, we know that if Boston goes up in a series, I mean, they're pretty much guaranteed to just give a game away anyway.
Yep.
So it wouldn't surprise me if that happens in like a game 4 in Orlando type of thing. But I still got Boston in this one, but Orlando definitely has my respect. I'm not looking past them in this one.
100%. I think you hit it right there as well, where I was a little bit high on Orlando. I thought they were going to be a 3-4 seed this season
Hmm.
just because of how great they are defensively. Obviously, we've seen throughout the year they still need some offense on their team. They still do lack some shooting on the wing. They do still need some of that. But I do think that this team is fun, exciting, and with Paolo, Franz Wagner, unfortunately with Jalen Suggs being out, we don't really have that. But I think the core that they really
Hmm.
have built around this team has been solid. KCP maybe hasn't been the best addition for them this
Hmm.
season, but I do think that they will give the Celtics at least one win. I have Celtics in 5. I've even seen some people have Celtics in 6, and I think that the Magic could give them some competence there, maybe win 2 games depending on how the Celtics team really does roll into the start of the playoffs. But overall, I think just unfortunately the Magic just don't have the offensive firepower to really combat with the Boston Celtics, specifically from 3-point range. And as we've seen when the Celtics go up against teams that aren't the greatest from 3-point range or could seem some struggles from 3-point range, they do take care of their business.
Yeah, that was kind of my main takeaway too with Orlando. I just felt like offensively, they just don't scare me. Even in their last game against Boston, when Boston had basically everybody out, they still only scored what was like 96 points. Like they still couldn't even crack 100 against Boston's BC team. So obviously they have solid players and they can score, but they just don't scare me as an offensive threat. And I think when you're going up against the reigning champion Celtics, who are one of the best teams on both sides of the ball, I just don't think that'll be enough for an upset.
Yeah, I think that out of all the matchups in the Eastern Conference, I feel like the most confident, and it may be just because of the bias, but because we watch them every
Okay.
single night, that the Celtics would,
Right.
be able to handle this Magic team. Even though that's no slight on the Orlando Magic, as they are talented.
Right.
Obviously, we mentioned just the injuries and the lack of offensive compared to the Boston Celtics, I think it's going
Mhm.
to hinder them. But I think next offseason, if the Magic do look to upgrade, get some shooting on the wing, maybe look at that center room because Wendell Carter Jr. has been solid, but I haven't really seen him take that leap necessary to put himself in like a top tier center category. And I think like
Mhm.
similar to the Celtics a couple seasons ago, right, where or last year when they made those moves to get KP and Drew Holiday. Don't necessarily think you need to make that drastic of a move if you're the Magic now, but in the next
Mhm.
1 to 2 seasons, if you're looking to build around this core and Paolo and Franz Wagner, you're going to want to use some of these tradable contracts and Cole Anthony, maybe Jonathan Isaac, Wendell Carter Jr., KCP to get some upgrades built around those three. So I would expect them to be like interesting on the market in the future as well.
Mhm. Absolutely.
All right. What do we want to do now?
I mean, I would love to continue, but I feel kind of bad continuing when Eamon's not here. It's his podcast at the
That
end of the
that's
day.
that's my kind of stance too. And I don't know if you've received a message
No,
from
I've
him.
been I've been checking. Still haven't heard. Should we? I'll send something.
Yeah, I haven't received a message yet, so I don't know what he wants to do. If he wants us to,
Everything all good? I'll just ask him. Everything all good?
yeah,
Let's see.
if he wants to stay here, if he wants to like restart it later.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I don't want to take away his thunder on his show without him
Yeah, on
here. You
his
know what I
own.
mean?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Out of the teams, I'll ask you a question. Out
Okay.
of the teams that you saw not make the playoffs, right? Because there was a decent amount that didn't compete and didn't make it that far. Which team do you
Yep.
think next year are you, I guess, the most interested in? Thinks
Oh,
that I guess
this
could like make a jump into the playoffs or the play-in.
the I almost feel like this is kind of like a cheat code answer. But I feel like it's probably just San Antonio.
Okay, yeah.
Because if it weren't for Wemby going down as early as he did, you know, they were in the postseason hunt
Hmm.
before he went down, and that was before they even got. Well, most of that was before they even got De'Aaron Fox. So, um, I think San Antonio has a lot going well for them. Um, I especially because it feels like reaching the postseason now is a lot more realistic for a team like San Antonio because teams like I don't think Sacramento is going to be a play-in team next year as it stands.
Hmm.
Um, we'll see what's going on with Memphis. I just feel like San Antonio could make that jump in the West, and I'm excited to see what they do in the offseason. I'm excited to see what they do with Chris Paul, especially. I know he's a free agent. I know he said he doesn't plan on retiring yet, uh, but I also don't know how many. I mean, I guess because it's Chris Paul, teams will still be interested, but I can't imagine that many teams are going to be calling up Chris Paul, begging for him to sign there. Maybe I'm just overlooking Chris Paul at this stage in his career, but um, either way, I think that's going to be an interesting narrative to follow. But if I had to give a team that didn't make the playoffs or even just the postseason this year that I think will make it next year, I think I'm going to go with the Spurs.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite answer too as well. I'll obviously give another one, but I think you agree. I agree with you with the Kings flaming out a little bit. Even though I want the Suns to make the play-in slash playoffs, who knows what that team is going to be
Yeah.
looking like at this point next season? So they could be towards the bottom if they decide to go rebuild.
Mm,
I think Dallas will obviously be in some questionable conversations as well
yeah.
next year. The one team that I am keeping my eye on because they made a sneaky move kind of going into this season in acquiring Denny Avdija was the Portland Trailblazers.
Mm,
And I feel like they've kind of really set an identity this season because before this season, I
yeah.
honestly didn't really know how to evaluate them with Scoot Henderson not having the best rookie year, Shaden Sharp being a little bit injury prone, Tumani Kamara and DeAndre Ayton not really like setting themselves in their roles. I didn't really know what to expect with this Portland Trailblazers team. It felt like they were good individual players, but could they, I
Yep.
guess, become a unit and work together? And we saw that specifically in that second half of the season. I do think they'll have to make some moves. Like I don't think Anthony Simons is a long-term player for them in their future. I think they'll look to potentially move off him to get a
Hmm.
little bit younger. I do think DeAndre Ayton will be moved in the future. Robert
Hmm.
Williams is another name as well, and I think what they can use with those contracts can I guess add some maybe veteran type players like a team like Detroit has done in the past or Houston has done in the past and Washington we saw at the trade deadline as well to really give themselves a chance in that play in and I think fighting for that spot alongside San Antonio as well. I think those are the two teams out west specifically. Out east don't necessarily know, maybe Toronto depending on how Brandon Ingram
Yeah.
looks with that team, but I would say Portland and San Antonio are definitely my two.
I like the Portland answer a lot too. They surprised me. I think they surprised almost everybody.
Yeah.
I like that Portland answer a lot. I yeah, I do feel like people overlooked the I can't say his name. Denny Avdia acquisition. And maybe it's just because of when it was, because if I'm remembering right, it was like during the draft or the day of the draft or
Yeah.
something like that. So I think that's why so many people just overlooked it. And I'm not saying he's a star or anything like that, but I was surprised that the trade wasn't talked about as much
Hmm.
as it should have been. Um, and I think he really played well in Portland, and I think you kind of nailed it with they now have an identity. I think Chauncey Billups is really starting to figure things out as a head coach,
Yep.
and I do like what Portland's doing, and I think they also got a bright future. It looks like they started to unlock Scoot Henderson a little bit more. So I'm excited to see how he progresses from here on out. So I think Portland's a good answer too. And then yeah, out east, I mean, really the only team here that I will give it to is Toronto. Wishful thinking, maybe Philadelphia, but that's like super duper wishful thinking. Um, I mean, I don't know. We don't even know what's going on with Joel Embiid and Paul George in terms of their careers at this point.
Yep.
That's I- I know people were kind of making those jokes when they got Paul George last year. Um, I didn't think it'd be this bad. Like I never thought it would be this bad. I figured maybe they would slip and be like a play-in team. I never thought it would be this bad. So I feel for 76ers fans. That's rough.
No, I agree with you. I never thought it could get that low. I thought maybe I was a little bit high on them. I thought third seed, fourth seed, maybe in the East. I
Hmm.
thought potentially, like
So,
you said, 6, 7, kind of close to that, like on the fringe, like they were last year. But I didn't think it could be to where they are just a laughing stock and successfully tanked the second half of the season. I didn't realize how far they fell. I didn't realize that they were like the 13 or 14th. They got all the way down there which was kind of
mhm,
crazy because they obviously needed to because the Thunder have their first round pick if it's not top six,
yeah,
right? So
yep,
the Sixers are trying to do their best there, and it's going to be interesting to see because I don't think they're gonna necessarily. It's obviously a lottery, but I don't necessarily know if they're going to be lucky enough to win the first round pick. So if that's the case, when you're looking at their players and their roster, what they can really kind of do around that as well. Toronto, like you kind of mentioned, looks interesting, but out east, I feel like every team's kind of just like set kind of in the playoff rankings and maybe like
yeah.
maybe
Um,
some teams will move up, or like maybe Miami falls out, but I feel like Miami is interesting enough to where they can add some
mhm,
offense this offseason and they have the money to do so.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think another team, not saying I think they're going to make the playoffs or anything, but I think just a team I'm kind of looking at is Washington. Like, I don't think they're
Yes.
going to make a Pistons like jump,
Hmm.
but I mean, they kind of have an exciting team. They kind of have a nice young core with Alex Sarr, who really started to figure things out towards the end of the season. Carrington, I'm really high on. I think he's going
Hmm.
to be a really good player in the league. Bilal Koulibaly, before he got injured, was having another fantastic season. And I mean, I'm interested to see what they do with guys like Marcus Smart, Chris Middleton. Are they going to keep them on as kind of veteran leaders? Are they going to trade them for picks or other future assets? Um, but I'm not going to say that I think they're going to, make it far. Like I'm still not predicting that they'll make the playoffs or anything next year, but I'm interested to see where they go from here.
100%. I agree with you. I think they're kind of the most intriguing team, maybe in the Eastern Conference, just because they, like, similar to Portland, they now kind of have that identity, they have that direction. They've moved on from some of these veterans, even though adding Smart and Middleton, the veterans that they have added have been like secondary helping ones to their stars in Bilal Koulibaly. Bub Carrington was someone I was also really high on when the draft area was around. I wanted him to go to the Suns, so I've been very keeping my eye on him, and he's been fantastic for the Washington Wizards this season. And Keyshawn George as well has been a solid shooter for them. Alex Sarr has been solid, and I really am interested to see what they can do with some of these other contracts. I know they have someone in Corey Kispert, and I think he's kind of on that trajectory of a Denny Avida for this team, where maybe he could be moved because he has a tradable contract, and maybe they could get a younger player and a draft pick or something like that to help them out. And they also they got uh, the guy from in the Chris Middleton trade, the young guy as well from the Bucks, AJ. But no, it's not AJ Green because he's the other guy that's on their team. But they got
Um, is it Lawson or is he
nah, he's on the
still in
Rap.
Dallas?
I think he's
Or
on
Raptors,
Raptors.
Raptors. Uh, you got me tripping
Let
now. Who are you talking about now? I'm confused. Let's see if I
um,
can figure it out.
me look it up too.
Johnson.
Yes, AJ
AJ Johnson.
Johnson,
Yep, yep,
yes,
yep.
but he's been solid for them, and they traded him just to get out of the second apron and just get off Chris
Mhm.
Middleton's contract. So he's been a solid addition for them. I really like what this Wizards team's doing, and I think they could use that. They could do that as well with, like you mentioned, maybe a Middleton contract or Smart, or maybe even a Jordan Poole's contract, where they could use
Yeah.
that to give to some team, and maybe they get like an undervalued young draft pick that hasn't really blossomed, or as we know as Celtics fans, maybe someone like an Aaron Nesmith, on a team that we haven't really seen blossom. I know Usman Dieng was someone mentioned from the Thunder, a
Hmm.
couple, but like a
Hmm.
player like that maybe brought to their team, and once again they could just see him blossom and shine through on their new roster.
Yeah, I think they got a bright future, and I really am looking forward to seeing what they do.
What's good?
What's going on, Evan? Welcome to the
Yo, what's
podcast.
up?
Glad to have you on. How you?
Good, good. Yeah, sorry about that. My Wi-Fi just crashed out.
Oh,
No, you're
it's
good.
all good. It's all good.
Oh shit. Um, were you guys live the entire time?
Yeah, no, we
Yeah.
were
Oh
doing a
shit.
podcast. We were
Oh
doing a pod
fire.
because the part that Bruce and I couldn't or yeah, the part that Bruce and I couldn't figure out is that we were both guests because we thought maybe one of us would be the host. So we were both guests and the live was still going. So I think even if we wanted to end it, I mean, I'm sure if we both left, it would have ended, but like we couldn't end it even if we
Yeah.
wanted to. So we just kept going.
All right, cool.
If you want to just keep going, we did do the Celtics Magic matchup, but we
Hmm.
haven't done anything beyond that.
All right, cool. Yeah, it's Celtics Magic. I'll keep it pretty short. Yeah, apologies to everyone for the technical difficulties. My Wi-Fi literally crashed out for the last, I don't know, half hour or whatever. But yeah, Celtics Magic. I'll keep it pretty simple. Magic have played the Celtics tough over the last few years, but the 3 point disparity is just such a massive advantage for the Celtics, the best 3 point shooting team in the league compared to the Magic, who are the worst 3 point shooting team in the league. So I think
Mhm.
that's way too much for the Magic to overcome, and then overall Celtics are just way more talented. But I do think it's going to be somewhat competitive. I think it's going to go five. Magic will steal a game. It's hard for me to ever pick the Celtics to sweep, just
Yeah.
based off their main characteristics. They're always a little bit, they always have that one game in every series. But I think we'll get five competitive games. So yeah, I'll go with the Celtics in five. What did you guys say for that one?
I think we both essentially said the same thing. I know I said Celtics in five. I think
Yeah.
Bruce also said Celtics in five because
Hmm.
we all basically had the same idea. Like if the Celtics go up 3-0, I could see them just giving a game away to Orlando. The one thing that I did make clear is that I do feel like the Magic do deserve their respect. I don't think I'm not giving them that fifth game just for fun. I do think they have a very talented roster, and I think the part that's really interesting to me is that they were so resilient. Despite all the injuries they went through with Paolo and Franz and Mo Wagner and Jalen Suggs, who's still out. He's gonna be out for the year. But despite all of that, they still made their way into the postseason, and now they're in the playoffs, and they are still, I think, the second best defensive team in the NBA statistically. Like you don't get to that by accident. So I do think the Magic got a really good thing going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Jalen Suggs in the mix, this would just be a far different team in my eyes. And then I think off season wise, they just got to add another shooter. They really just need more shooting on this roster, but I don't think they're too far away from really being a true contender in the East.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what we were saying. Basically, needing some more shooting, and kind of just being a solid defensive team. Dealing with the injuries as well, kind of dropped them down a little bit in the standings. I think they would have been a better team if they didn't have to deal with as many injuries as they incurred this season.
For sure. All right, let's move on to the second round. Yeah, we got. I think we. Well, I think most of us had Thunder and Nuggets there, but then I think you had the Clippers there, Bruce. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
All right. Do you want to start us off with the second round?
Sure, I can start us off. So, with the second round here, we got, for me, we got the Thunder and the Clippers, but for you guys, the Thunder and the Nuggets. Regardless of the matchup, it's going to be fun either way. You get, obviously, Shea versus old team, the team that drafted him, in the Clippers in my obvious way. If not, you get the Thunder versus the Nuggets, two teams in the Northwest Division, the top two teams. Nikola Jokic going up against a top tier defense. I think it's going to be fun regardless, but I do think that the Thunder's claustrophobic defense is going to be too much for both of these teams offensively to realistically strike. We've seen the Clippers. James Harden has some lapses, and I think the Thunder will be able to use Case and Wallace and Alex Caruso and Lou Dort and all their defenders that they have with the size to be able to guard him. And I think with the if they were to take on the Denver Nuggets, obviously same thing with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. So I'm going to be going Thunder, and I'm going to be going Thunder in 6 games to be making the Western Conference Finals, something they failed to do last season.
Yeah, I also have. I mean, I have Thunder Nuggets, but I also have Thunder and six. I think. I mean, either way, like you said, Bruce, Nuggets or Clippers, it's going to be a good series. I also believe Nuggets or Clippers, it's still going to be OKC. Either way, it should be fun. I still got OKC because I still just think they are the most well-rounded team at the very least in the Western Conference, if not the whole league. So I got OKC in six over the Nuggets. I see that happening, whether it's the Nuggets or the Clippers, though.
Hmm.
Yeah, I get the same as you guys. I got Thunder and six for that one. I think you guys really nailed it. Just how dominant this defense is. Specifically with my pick, being able to really take out Murray from this series would be massive. And with the injury that Murray's dealing with right now, it's really unclear what level he'll be playing at to begin with. So I think just with their elite perimeter defense there, that's going to make it super challenging because the Nuggets really don't have another really secondary creator next to Jokic outside of him. And then with the double bigs that they have with Chet and Ihart, I think it will also be somewhat of a tough series for Jokic. He's obviously going to get his regardless, but this is probably the team that's best equipped to deal with him in terms of just their elite interior defense as well. So yeah, I think you got to respect Jokic just based off his greatness. He'll be able to get 2 games, but at the same time, this
Mm.
Thunder team is just so well rounded, like you said, and I think they're ready to make a at least a conference finals run.
Yep.
100%.
All right, we can move on to Lakers Warriors. That should be a fun one. I can start it off
Yeah.
here. Um, got I'm gonna go. I think this series is going 7. These teams are very similar. Both
Mhm.
teams do sort of lack that front court size, but they have incredible playoff experience. And then obviously this would be a huge series based off the, LeBron and Steph matchup, which we've seen so many times, and has just really been a staple. over the past decade. I just have to trust LeBron and Luca again, though, just based off that shot creation and playmaking potential. It's really off the charts, and I think really any team's going to have a hard time matching up with them based off that. I think you might have a matchup for one of them, but you definitely don't have a matchup for both of them, especially this Warriors team. I think maybe Jimmy could maybe guard one of them, but then I don't know who else is really going to be guarding the other. So I think it's sort of pick your poison, and there's really not a good choice with this Lakers team. So I'm gonna go Lakers in a tight 7 game series. I think the Warriors. Based off their experience and the fact that they're going up against another team that doesn't have a ton of front court size, and
Mhm.
their overall just their shooting and how elite they are in the playoffs, I think they'll be able to make it a super competitive series. But I'm gonna go with Lakers in this one. What are you guys feeling?
So I would agree with you. I would go with the Lakers here. I'm going to be taking them in 7 as well. You mentioned the matchups here, and I think that we'll see Jimmy trying to take on Luca for a majority of it. We'll see Draymond trying his best to guard LeBron James. But the one thing I don't really see here is someone to stop Austin Reeves on the Golden State Warriors, right? And he's obviously their third best player. And you mentioned that no team really has that size advantage. They both can run a little bit small. Dorian Finney-Smith is going to be getting into those actions on this Lakers team, helping out this squad defensively as well. And I just think the overall experience from the Lakers, even though they both do have that playoff experience, that veteran leadership, I do think that the top to bottom of the rotation of the Lakers has more playoff experience. And with LeBron and Luca, that's still going to push them past the Warriors.
I mean, yeah, I also got Lakers in 7. But like, I feel like I can't ignore the fact that I just don't see a world where Stephen Curry is not in for a fantastic series. Like, obviously, it's
Hmm.
Stephen Curry. He's always going to be in for one, but specifically against the Lakers, I just like who's going to guard him? I mean, it's not going to be Luca. And I don't think it's going to be LeBron. And I mean, I know obviously Dorian Finney-Smith is a forward, he's a wing. Like, do they put him on Steph? They put Rui on Steph for the size. Like, I just don't see how Stephen Curry isn't about to go crazy in this series. I'm still going with the Lakers. I think for the reasons that you guys said, they're still going to be the Lakers are still more top heavy, and the Warriors don't have that front court size, just like the Lakers don't have it. So that's kind of a wash. But I could see the Warriors winning this off the heels of Steph Curry, at least.
No, I think that they can make a big turning point. Like you just mentioned, Steph is going to be absolutely going nuclear. And we've seen in playoff series as well that Steph Curry can go into takeover mode and do it. Not that Luca and
Hmm.
LeBron can't as well, but I
Right.
guess him and Jimmy Butler have that tendency. And we saw it in the play-in game as well, where they can just set themselves up and just destroy. And I feel like in a couple of these games, we're going to see that with Steph Curry, where he's just going to be going unconscious from 3 point range, and the Warriors fans are going to be going absolutely insane. So I could definitely see it going either way, and I think with the veteran leadership being on both teams as well, that kind of can spark it to also switch.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really like your point about Curry there. I think this is a great series for him. Just with the Lakers' perimeter defense, it's really not ideal. And how active Curry is off the ball, he's always going to really open up shots for himself there. And just him being the best shooter of all time is always going to be a huge advantage. So I think he'll have a massive series if we end up getting this matchup for sure. But yeah, ultimately, I'm leaning Lakers. I think we're all looking forward to this matchup, and yeah, it should be a
Mhm.
fun one if we end up getting it. Just yeah, classic LeBron Steph series. So yeah, let's move on to the East with Cavs Pacers. I think that was all of our matchups there. Uh,
Yep.
you want to kick this one off, Ely?
Yes, sir. Uh, so Cavaliers and Pacers, because the Cavaliers have the number 1 seed, they would obviously have home court advantage. Uh, this is going to be, I think, another very close series. Maybe I'm giving Indiana too much credit, um, but Indiana played very well against the Cavaliers this season. I remember in December or January, whatever it was, the Cavaliers hadn't lost in over a month, and the Pacers were the team to stop that streak. And so I feel like the Pacers are going to make this a very, very, very tough series. The Pacers are resilient. I think they match up very well against Cleveland. I'm still going to go with Cleveland just because I do think they are the more top heavy team. And I think their size with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley will be a problem for Indiana. So I'll go Cleveland in seven. But that is a series that I could see going both ways. And I feel like if there was somehow a world that existed where Indiana had the home court advantage, it could be different. But I'm going Cleveland in seven.
Yeah, I feel very similar with going with Cleveland over Indiana. I actually have them in 6 compared to 7. I just think that Cleveland's size down low will just be able to get it done with Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, having that perimeter, having the
Mhm.
great defense that they've been able to have. And obviously, Indiana has that great guard defense with Andrew Nemhard. They have Benedict Mathurin, who is a pretty solid scorer, but also has some size. They have TJ McConnell, who can kind of go off and combat with Ty Jerome. So I do think, once again, it'll be another fun series, but I think Cleveland just what the ability to run so many different matchups with Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter, and the starting 5 that they do have, just the flexibility that this team can bring out is what's going to be able
Mhm.
to, I guess, win the matchup wise versus Indiana and whatever they throw towards them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys nailed it. I think it's going to be a competitive series, but I'll go Cleveland in 6. To your point, Elie, I think this Pacers team really isn't scared of the Cavs, and I think that will be an advantage there. And they do have great depth, and like you were talking about, Bruce, the perimeter defense has been huge for them. I just think, like you said, I think the combination of Mobley and Allen down low will just be a little bit too much for them to handle. So I think it's going to end up being a 6-game series, but I would expect a competitive series from two division rivals, and yeah, I think it should be a good one either way. And if we end up getting Milwaukee, I also think that one could be competitive for different reasons, mainly just because of how dominant Giannis is and how they could match up potentially a little bit with Cleveland's front court. But I think this is a series the Cavs are going to win in 6 or so games. And Elie, I know you cover the Pacers a little bit, and you sort of view them as that dark horse title team. So
Mhm.
can you just speak to that a little bit? And do you see a scenario maybe where they end up pulling off an upset against Cleveland?
Oh, 100%. I feel like the reason I think outside of them just being in Indiana, I think the reason that nobody really talks about the Pacers is because they don't have a superstar. They don't have an MVP candidate. Tyrese Halliburton's amazing, and he's their best player, but he wasn't even an all-star this year. Granted, it's because he had a really slow start to the year. But I think when people talk about the Pacers, they say their offense is amazing, but they can't do anything anywhere else. And I think that was true for a while. But the part that I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but I feel like the part that the national media don't talk about is that the Pacers are actually an above average defensive team now. And I believe they were a top 10 defensive team after the new year, which is when they really hit their stride. They've had the fourth best record since the start of the new year, only behind OKC, Boston, and Cleveland. So that's not nothing. They're one of 4 teams that won their season series against the Celtics this year, and they're very resilient. They're a much more well-rounded team. They're dangerous at home, and they're going to be a tough playoff out. And for a team like Cleveland, who especially recently has that history of kind of, I guess I'll just say choking in the playoffs. I mean, you go up against a team that's kind of known to rise to the occasion and not back down from the challenge. Uh, I do think Indiana would have a real shot at pulling off this upset. Like I said, I do think it hurts them. I mean, this is what an upset is, that they don't have home court advantage, because if they did, that would obviously make things different. But I think even without that, the Pacers would present a pretty big challenge to Cleveland.
Yeah, for sure. I think you brought up two really key points there about uh, being the fourth best team since the new year behind those three dominant 60-win teams. And then the defense. The defense, for me, being a top 10 defense since the new year has really changed my perspective on this team. I definitely, last year, I thought it was a little bit more of a fluky run, but just seeing how great their defense has been for this second half of the season has changed my perspective and really changed how I view them as a playoff team. I think going up against a 60-plus win Cleveland team is going to be a challenge. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a magical run, especially if there's some unfortunate injuries involved on Cleveland's side, which you sort of always have to account for, unfortunately. But I think this is sort of a sleeper team for me. And yeah, like you said, they have a lot of experience in the playoffs as well, which is huge. Any closing thoughts on this series, Bruce?
Yeah, I would just say that with Indiana, I agree with you guys. Very sleeper team. At the beginning of the season, I ultimately thought they were going to be the top tier team in the East, similar to like the Cavs. I didn't think the Cavs would be the one seed and really take over, but I thought that the Pacers would be that dominant team in the Eastern Conference for the Central Division. So I do think that, like we've kind of mentioned, they do have the opportunity to upset if Cleveland has an injury or if they can just match their pace of play or even do better than their pace of play and kind of put Cleveland on their heels.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the Celtics Knicks series. I think that's what we all had there. Want to kick this one off, Bruce?
Yeah, I got you. And we got Celtics Knicks here once again. This is the matchup that everyone has been looking forward to this season, right? The Celtics obviously winning the NBA championship, the defending champions, top team in the East. And before the season, everyone thought the Knicks were going to be that 2 seed, right? They thought this was going to be the
Mhm.
Eastern Conference Finals matchup that we were going to see the Knicks loaded up on these wings, going out and getting Mikal Bridges, extending OG Anunoby, going and getting Karl Anthony Towns, really trying to combat against this Boston Celtics team. But I do think that the Celtics, top to bottom, have more depth than this New York Knicks roster does have. And I do think the Celtics will be able to exploit that with the New York Knicks, specifically with them running these shortened rosters. Obviously, in the playoffs, it does get a little bit cut. But with the Celtics, their top eight, and even utilizing guys like Torrey Craig in that O'Shea Brissett role, utilizing a guy like Baylor Shireman, maybe if Sam Hauser or Peyton Pritchard isn't doing the best offensively for you, maybe even throwing in a guy like Neemias Queta to get you some rim protection if you need it. All three of those kind of just players to kind of just throw out there and use an experience, I think will help the Boston Celtics if they do lack in something versus this New York Knicks team. And ultimately, I do think that their defense will be able to kind of surrender this Knicks offense. So I got the Celtics in 6 here and going to the Eastern Conference Finals back-to-back seasons.
Yeah, definitely. I got the Celtics in this one. I'm gonna go five. We saw it in the regular season. The Celtics won all four of those matchups. Uh, three of them at least being sort of in dominant fashion. I think the Knicks will be a little bit more competitive in the playoffs, but ultimately I have to just trust the Celtics in this spot. I am a little bit. I don't care because I'm a Celtics fan, so I guess it's not a bad thing. But I would say the Knicks have been a little disappointing to me just as an NBA fan. I thought they would
Mm-hmm.
be more in that top tier of contention. And I thought they would give the Celtics a lot more problems heading into the season. I think when I really look at this Knicks team, their real weakness is defensively, both at the point of attack with Brunson and with Towns at the rim. And I think that's something we've seen time and time again. The Celtics have just totally exploited, and I think that's going to really benefit them, especially in the playoffs. This is a Celtics team that always loves to matchup hunt, but the playoffs become even more about matchups. So I think that's really the most important factor here, and I think the Celtics can really expose that in a 7 game series. And then I would also say Mikal Bridges defensively, especially, hasn't been the same player this season. So I think
Mhm.
that's another thing worth noting when we look at this team who gave up 5 or 6 first round picks to go get Bridges, and it's really with the hopes of him and OG being able to match up with Tatum and Brown. OG's been an incredible defender in his own right. He's continued his defensive excellence, but not having Bridges be at that same level really hurts the Knicks. I feel like it's hurt them throughout the season, and especially in a playoff matchup with Boston. I just really don't have any confidence in them in that area. I'm going to give them a game just because I mentioned earlier it's hard for me to really pick the Celtics team to ever pull off a
Mhm.
sweep. But at the same time, I think this will be a somewhat dominant series. We'll probably get a few close games, but for the most part, I really like Boston's chances, and I'd be surprised if the Knicks were able to upset them.
Yeah, I think the major point here too is that the Knicks. I said it already. The Knicks have a very talented roster. Like they deserve to be a top seed in the East. They can do it from on both sides of the ball. They are just a really good team. They're very versatile. All of that. I just feel like they have done literally nothing. I don't think they've won a single game against one of the top three teams in the league. I know that stat was going around for a while. I think it ended that way. The Knicks, I just don't have any faith in them in a playoff series against a team like the Celtics or the Cavaliers or even somehow the Thunder. Granted, if they made it all the way to the finals, maybe I would change my mind. But as it stands, I just don't see them winning a series like that. And a lot of talk has been on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and what can the Knicks do to contain them. But what are they doing to contain Kristaps Porzingis? They're not doing anything. And I just feel like assuming Kristaps Porzingis is healthy and assuming that he's playing Kristaps Porzingis basketball that he loves to play against the Knicks, I wonder why. I just feel like it would be really, really, really tough for the Knicks to beat them in a series. And I think if I had to kind of put it in like a sentence, I feel like this will be a very close, non-close series. Like I could see it being a 5 game series, but every game is probably pretty close. Kind of like what we saw against Indiana and Boston last year. I could see it going like that, where every game is close, but when you look at the end result, it's pretty clear who the better team was.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think with the Celtics team, you
Yeah.
brought up another great thing, Elie, on Kristaps Porzingis, and this season, like looking out for his revenge, we've seen him really been able to step up that 3-point shot in versus this New York Knicks teams as well, being as like just roaming around and getting to his spots, and I think the Celtics will utilize that, running some double big lineups specifically versus this Knicks team to kind of combat that and use Porzingis as a power forward stretch scorer, similar to how the Knicks try to use it with Cat.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out my boy Jacob Blocks, big Knicks fan. He's in the chat saying even though he's a Knicks fan, he'd say Celtics in six. And then sort of as we were discussing, he brought up the point that Knicks historically are pretty terrible at guard and stretch bigs, such as Porzingis. So yeah, I think that's going to be really huge in this series. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think we sort of hit on everything there. So we can go ahead and move on to the conference finals. I'll start it off here in the West. All right, here it's time for my big take. I'm, I'm
Uh-oh.
gonna I'm hinting at it a little bit, but yeah, obviously the Thunder. I want to preface this by saying I've really enjoyed watching this Thunder team. I like a lot of their players. I like all of their players really. They've had an incredible season. SGA would probably be he would be my MVP this year. I think you have to respect just how great he was, the two-way excellence on a
Mhm.
68 win team, almost won 70 games, quite literally one of the best regular season teams of all time by any metric, including win total and then any advanced stat. I think they ended up leading all teams ever in point differential, had one of the best net ratings of all time. With that being said, I am a big believer in playoff experience, and this Thunder team has never made it to the conference finals before. I think they're obviously ready for that step. I don't think they're necessarily ready to win an NBA title just yet. I think they're a year away for me personally. Uh, Basketball wise, there's not a ton that you can point to as weaknesses, but one thing that I would say is their lack of secondary shot creation. That's another big theme with all my answers and picks here. I just can't believe in teams that don't have that dependable secondary shot creation. I know Jalen Williams, he's had a terrific year, but for a guy who's in his third year and who really didn't show out too much in the playoffs last year, I have a hard time believing in him. So I'm gonna lean Lakers here. I think just the advantage you have in any series with Luka and LeBron, as I've discussed about in the previous matchups with the Lakers, I think that's just too hard to overcome for any team. Despite how excellent this Thunder defense is, I think they're going to have a really tough time containing Luka and LeBron, and the playmaking and shot creation that they bring is just such an advantage over this more so, I would say, a little bit unproven Thunder team in the playoffs. I'm going to go Lakers in. I'm going to do 6. I'm going to say 6. I think it will be very close to a 7 game series, but I'm going to say 6. I think this Lakers team, just with their experience, it's really hard to bet against them for me. And then also Austin Reeves, as we've discussed earlier, just having another elite creator in that backcourt, another really good playmaker. It's really tough to match up with. I understand how great this Thunder defense is, and if there's a team that can sort of limit them, and especially with their front court size and the Lakers' lack of a traditional big man, that could be an advantage for the Thunder there. However, I just have a tough time picking a team where I don't know what to expect totally from their second and third options offensively, and I really feel confident in the Lakers' second and third options, especially in a 7 game series. I think they're going to be able to get the job done and go to the finals.
Yeah, I think for the Thunder here, I'm going to be saying the Thunder. I'm going to be disagreeing with you, Eamon. But I think for the Thunder going into this playoffs, they have a difficult quest. Even if, the series don't go to 6 or 7 games every time, every matchup they run into, regardless if it's Dallas or Memphis, uh, Los Angeles Clippers or Denver, or in this right around, like where we were predicting either the Lakers or the Warriors, I think all of those teams can kind of give the Thunder some sort of problem, some sort of issue. And I do agree with you that I do think the Thunder's chance for winning a championship is 1 year short. I do think they're still going to have to make some more moves out there on the market, but I do think they'll be able to take down this Lakers team for the sheer fact that their defense, I think, will be able to limit Luka Doncic, and we've seen that with the Celtics and stuff like that in the past where they can kind of use that. And obviously, LeBron will be the main factor. I don't think they'll be able to limit LeBron, but I do think that this Oklahoma City team will be able to limit Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic enough offensively to be able to combat the LeBron with the rest of their team led by Shea. And I'm going to go Thunder in 7, even though I think it will be a great series. And I do think the winner of the Warriors and the Lakers kind of gives the Thunder the worst option making the conference finals. I think those are the two teams they don't want to see in that spot right there. But I do believe that the Thunder will get it done.
I'm just going to preface by saying I'm still going with OKC in 6 because I just think they're way too talented to not at least make the playoffs. But I do think you both made really good points. And this is a little bit of a bold opinion, but I've kind of changed my mind over the last couple of years. I used to actually think that playoff experience didn't matter. Not that it didn't matter, but like that was never a takeaway for me because I always felt like if you were good enough to make it to the conference finals, or if you were good enough to have the best record in the NBA, why is the playoffs going to be the reason that stops? But I saw an interesting stat the other day. It was since 2000, only one NBA team has won a championship without making a conference finals or just the conference finals within 3 years or something like that. And that's the 2015 Golden State Warriors, who ended up becoming a dynasty. So I've kind of changed my opinion on the playoff experience thing a little bit. I think it's a big reason if you even want to go back a while now. That's a big reason why maybe the Celtics couldn't hold on in 2018 and beat the LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe it was a lack of experience. I'm still gonna go OKC because I just think they're the better team. But I feel like I'm more open to changing that opinion now.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a
Yeah.
great stat, and I mean, I'm perfectly willing to admit I could totally be wrong on this one, and the Thunder might just be that good. But like you said,
Mhm.
the only team that has really overcome that lack of experience barrier is the Golden State Warriors, and they were just so dominant, and the Thunder have been so incredibly dominant. So there's definitely some parallels there. But yeah, ultimately, especially going up against two of the best playoff performers in the league, two of the best players in the league, in Luka and LeBron, I think that's kind of a brutal matchup. I do think you guys brought up a good point about how they could potentially be able to limit Luka, especially Lou Dort. He's one of the best defenders in the league, and he's had success against Luka in the past. So I think it's definitely possible there. But yeah, I have a tough time imagining this Thunder team winning it all. They're definitely contenders and they certainly belong in that conversation. But fun fact: this would be the youngest team in 50 years since the Trailblazers back in the 70s to win it all. And when you have an average age of 24, I just think you're a little bit away. As you guys talked about with the Celtics, that's another thing that really is a big factor for me. Just watching the Celtics core develop those playoff scars and get that experience. I think it was a huge reason why they were able to win in 2024 instead of years past when they didn't really have that experience yet and they had to get that. They had to really earn their stripes. So I sort of think the Thunder are in a similar position. and I could totally see them winning it all in a couple of years, next year even. But I just don't think they're there yet, and we saw that last year a little bit in the playoffs, and I think they're going to run into some similar problems.
Yeah, I think if
Yeah.
you're the Thunder, the team that you don't want to see is this Los Angeles Lakers team in the Western Conference Finals. I think that's kind of like the team I would be wanting to avoid the most and hoping that they are able to fall before we run into them, just because I think that if there's any team that's going to kind of give them a run for their money, it is going to be LeBron James and Luka Doncic.
Hmm. I agree.
Absolutely. All right. Let's go on to the east side of things. Uh, Either of you guys want to kick it off for the east?
Sure, I can kick it off for the East. We can go and look at it here. And for the East, we got the Celtics and the Cavs, right? Everyone's putting these two teams here, the top two teams in the Eastern Conference all season long. The Celtics and Cavs have had some great battles throughout this entire season. And regardless of the bias, we see that 69% of the fans are choosing the Celtics to make it back to the NBA Finals. And I'm also going to be going with that 69% of fans because I do believe that this Celtics team, even though the Eastern Conference has gotten better, themselves have gotten better in every certain aspect. And I feel like they have those quality role players to match up against this Cleveland Cavaliers team. The Cavs, adding DeAndre Hunter, obviously can eliminate those Darius Garland late game minutes where they can run Donovan Mitchell at the point guard, which is going to help Cleveland versus this Celtics squad. But I do think the Celtics have the guys in Horford, Porzingis, Luke Cornett to combat this double big lineup that the Cavs can present with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and I think that's what's going to be able to get it done for the Celtics. They obviously don't have home court advantage, but I don't think that matters for this team. I think they get it done in 6 games, and they will be in the NBA Finals versus the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, I also got Boston. I just feel like if it weren't for Cleveland's red hot start, which I can't discredit, they still went on that start. I still feel like we would be looking at Boston as the clearly better team. But
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland's nice. Cleveland, I mean, they didn't get that record by accident. And I think they're obviously a fantastic team. I think they're going to make it to the conference finals pretty easily. But just watching the games between Boston and Cleveland, it's like Cleveland doesn't scare me as much as probably their record should, as much as their record should say they should. They're a great team, and they've got size, and they're very versatile. They're good on both sides of the ball, but I just feel like the Celtics match up very, very, very well with them, and I I'm also going with Boston in this series, but I'm giving Cleveland their respect. So I'll say 7, but I think it'll be Boston.
Yeah, for sure. I think you guys really nailed it there. I'm gonna go Celtics in 6. I think it will be a really close 6 and could even go 7 for sure. I don't see a scenario where this is a 4 or 5 game series. I think
Mhm.
these teams are pretty evenly matched, and in my eyes, the Cavs are the biggest threat to the Celtics uh, out of either conference. So yeah, I've been super impressed with this Cavs team throughout the year, though. I mean, the offensive jump Mobley's taken is huge. Donovan Mitchell, we've definitely seen better seasons from him from a raw scoring perspective, but at the same time, I think this might be his best overall season. He's really taken a backseat to some of those guys like Mobley and Garland and really allowed them to shine. He's been a lot better defensively than I can remember in previous seasons, and he's also
Mhm.
been a really good playmaker. So I think this is a great season from him as well. And then Darius Garland had a real bounce back year after kind of a rough year last year. So really, all those things together, and then they have a ton of forward depth, has really propelled them to be this dominant 60-win team and get the number 1 seed in the East. I do think their size can be a little bit challenging, just based off those double bigs and how dominant they are in the interior. I think that can be a little challenging, and especially now that Mobley's expanded his game to be more of a 3 point shooter, I think that really opens up the game. And we saw sort of the weaknesses of that in previous playoffs where they had to have 2 guys inside, but now that Mobley's been able to shoot the three a little bit better, they don't have that problem. So I could totally see this team winning it all if things go right, and I think they're absolutely contenders. But I do think the Celtics just have a slight advantage going back to the experience factor again, and then I think their shot creation is a little bit more proven. I'm a tad concerned about the Jaylen Brown injury. He didn't look the same to end the season with that knee injury, but I think sort of as the playoffs go, he'll get back into the swing of things and he'll be able to sort of overcome that. And he's a warrior. He's battle tested, so I think he'll be able to really return to his elite level of play. We've seen how great he is in the playoffs, and I think just
Mhm.
having those two wins, I mean, it's always going to be a massive advantage for the Celtics, and even for a Cleveland team that did upgrade their depth at that position, especially with the DeAndre Hunter move. I don't see a way that they're necessarily going to be able to stop them. I do think they have a lot of good 3-point shooting wins, but outside of Hunter, I don't see another really defensive minded forward that could really stop them. I think Mobley's a great rim protector. He's very versatile. At the same time, I don't think you're gonna really be able to count on him to guard a Tatum for a 7 game series. I think it's gonna be tough there,
Mm.
and I think Garland is another big factor in this series. I think defensively, the Celtics can pick on him. He's a clear weak point there, and then they also have the perimeter defense to really limit him and Mitchell. I think Mitchell's gonna get his, and he's had a ton of success against the Celtics, so I wouldn't count him out at all. I think he'll have a big series, but I think they can really make things difficult for Garland and sort of take him out of the series with Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown. They can just throw so many different looks at him, and the size advantage for the Celtics over Garland specifically is huge. So yeah, I'm gonna go Celtics in 6, and I think they're returning to the finals.
Yeah,
Love
I
it.
agree with you, and I think that once again, this Celtics team has that experience. They have Joe Mazzulla, who's going to be going berserk on the sidelines, making sure things get done for this Celtics team. So I'm believing in this Celtics squad. I'm believing in um, everyone on this team. And I think that you mentioned the Jaylen Brown injury. I'm not as worried about it, but I think by the time the Celtics get to Cleveland, hopefully he's kind of realized what he needs to do or what his play style can be for this Celtics squad in his role that he'll be able to be successful.
I agree.
Absolutely. All right, Elie, you want to kick it off with the NBA Finals?
Yeah, give me the finals, man. All right, I guess we'll do it. I guess we'll do it. All right, so I got okay. This I don't know. I see the argument for both teams. Like I said, I got OKC. To be honest with you, if it is the Lakers, I do have Boston winning that series and probably we'll call it 6 games. I'm I'm a big believer in the Thunder because I mean the playoff experience is notable, and I don't think that's just a stat to be a stat. I think that's something to keep in mind. But I also feel like this team is good enough to kind of buck that trend. Like I feel like this team is good enough to, I guess, yeah, like just stop that playoff drought. Uh, or what am I trying to say? That like playoff inexperience stat, basically. I do like OKC, but I do think the Celtics also match up. But that's the thing with Boston. They match up well with everybody. Like there's nobody that I feel confident in defeating the Celtics in a 7 game series. I'm going to give it to Boston in 7, but I will give one major caveat. If Kristaps Porzingis isn't 100%, I don't think Boston's winning the series, or at least I don't think it'll be as competitive. Um, I'm still going to give it to Boston, but I do think Kristaps Porzingis is the X factor in the series, and I think because if he can play and combat some of the size that OKC has, I think the Celtics are fine. But if not, if he's not 100% and he's wobbling or he just straight up can't play, I think the Thunder are going to be in a position to take this one.
Yeah, I think that you brought up some great points. I think the Kristaps point is probably the most valid point with all of this because regardless of who they're going up against, the Lakers or the Thunder, they're going to need Kristaps Porzingis because he's
Hmm.
going to help out versus Chet Holmgren and versus Isaiah Hartenstein versus the Thunder or versus the Lakers, obviously, as we've seen, be that matchup disadvantage that they can present where he can absolutely just go low in the post and be a solid player for the Celtics to help them that in that series. similar to how Eamon kind of predicted with this Thunder team. I do think they are just a little bit too short on the experience, and I think they're going to be. This is going to be similar to the Boston Celtics a couple seasons ago when they took on the Warriors in the finals, where they were able to eclipse and kind of beat that Lakers team, that veteran team that had kind of, been a little bit rivaling with them the last couple of seasons with the Celtics with the Heat. But then once they get over that hump, I think the lack of inexperience with some of these guys, even though they have a top tier defense to compete against the Celtics, is going to come through. Now, you could say the same thing for the Celtics because throughout the season, guys like Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser in these matchups versus the Thunder did not do well. So arguably, it's going to have to be the reverse for this. But I do think that the Celtics will be able to get it done. I'm going to say in 7 games, this time not winning on home court, this time winning on the road and beating this Oklahoma City Thunder team.
Yeah, I think you guys brought up some great points about this matchup, and I really do think Porzingis will be even more important to this team than he was last year. Obviously, we saw him go down with the injury, and he didn't play too much during the playoffs, but I think they'll really need him, especially in a potential matchup against OKC, who has that elite front court size with Chet Holmgren and Ihart there. I think his presence will just be massive, and I mean, we've seen it all year. I think he makes a massive impact on both ends of the floor as a rim protector, as a guy that you can just throw lobs to on offense and who stretches the floor. He really does everything, and he does take them to sort of that next level. Yeah, I got a different matchup as we discussed in the last round. I'm gonna go Celtics Lakers. I'm gonna go Celtics in 6 here. I think the Celtics do repeat. I agree with you guys there. I think this will be a great series. I do think the Celtics are better equipped. You could make the argument for the Thunder as well, just with how elite their defense is. But as I mentioned earlier, I don't want to get into it, beat a dead horse, but the experience factor is huge. So I do think the Celtics are really the best equipped team to stop this dynamic duo of Luka and LeBron. We've seen specifically how great Jaylen Brown is on Luka. He defends Luka better than anyone in the league, and how he was able to really limit him in the finals last year. So I'm looking for that again. And then I also really like the Celtics size advantage, especially if Porzingis is at 100%. I think that will be huge in this series, considering the Lakers don't have a traditional center. Jackson Hayes, he's doing a solid job, but in a matchup against Porzingis, I think that might be a little bit tough. And then you also look at, I think Bruce mentioned this before, how the Celtics have been utilizing double big lineups with either Porzingis and Horford, or even some Porzingis and Cornette and Horford. They really have so many options there. I think that they can match up with the Lakers really nicely. And then the Celtics perimeter defense is also huge for this matchup with Derek White and Drew Holiday there. I think they're going to be able to sort of limit a guy like Reeves. LeBron, I think Tatum is super well equipped to guard LeBron just with how big and strong he is. He has elite athleticism as well. So I think they really have an answer to all of the Lakers stars there and have an advantage around the edges. Another thing I value is really continuity. We've seen the Celtics core really grow together, and they've dominated the last few seasons once Porzingis and Holiday arrived. But even going back to just the Jays and Derek White, they have so much experience together, so much continuity. I think that's just a massive advantage. They just are a little bit more comfortable with each other. I think this Lakers team could win a title. I wouldn't rule it out, especially just with how talented LeBron and Luka are. But it's tough for me to see a team that kind of came together at the trade deadline win a championship. That's pretty rare. I don't have a stat off of that, but most of the times these teams that win the title are teams that have been together for a while, and this is that Celtics team. I think it's huge that they won 60 games again. I think that's just a testament to how great they are. And when we look at repeat champions, this team really fits the mold of a repeat champion, and I'm confident that they can get it done.
Yeah, I'm confident as well. I think you really hit it right there. They have the molds to be a defending champion with everyone like playing their roles, and I guess having those rotational guys that not enter in the rotation, the stay ready group, really to stay involved for this Celtics team here. Like we mentioned as well, I think if they play the Lakers, it's a little bit of an easier series for the Celtics. I think they match up a lot better versus the Lakers than they do the Oklahoma City Thunder. So I could see it going, 6 games in a series like that. And as a Celtics fan, I would rather it see Celtics Lakers because then at least it would be a little bit of an easier matchup for the Celtics. So,
In theory,
I
yeah.
yes. I'd
I'm
rather my
with it.
bracket be wrong.
Yeah, I'm with it. I'm with it.
I think another thing that's interesting to note with this series is obviously it would be Celtics against Luca second time in a row. I think that would just be
Yes.
Mhm.
a cool storyline. I think obviously we talked about how well Brown matches up against Luca, but I think Tatum and Luca are sort of really developing their own rivalry and kind of have been as they sort of came into the league and started dominating it around the same time. So I think that's just another cool thing to note, and this would really reignite that Celtics Lakers rivalry. I feel like we get at least one Celtics Lakers matchup in most decades. So I
Hmm.
feel like we're sort of trending to that, whether it be this year or in a couple of years. I think the Lakers are just gonna be good for a while with Luca. So yeah, that's another just fun thing
Yep,
to note there. But yeah, I do think the Celtics are really well equipped to take on this Lakers team.
I agree.
I agree, and I think, like you mentioned, Eamon, if they don't meet this year, in the next couple of years, regardless if it's Luca and LeBron or post superstar, post LeBron with Luca, they will have someone ready to go combating against the Celtics team.
For sure. So obviously we're all Celtics fans, and we all ended up picking the Celtics to repeat. Is there any part of you guys that's a little hesitant about that? I'll start. I will say my only concern with this team is injuries, whether it be Porzingis's extensive injury history or Brown's knee injury that he's dealing with. I feel like that's the only thing that can really derail them. Until I see differently, I just can't pick a team to beat this Celtic squad when they're fully healthy, and I don't really see any flaws. But anything you guys are looking at, whether it be injuries or maybe something else.
I would say just injury wise, I think is the only thing that I'm really concerned about. I think Elie brought up the Kristaps Porzingis injury, and I think that's kind of the main
Mhm.
concern. They're obviously keeping him healthy. Obviously, looking at Drew Holiday, he had the mallet finger. I know that injury is cleared, but hopefully he can still stay healthy. Obviously, guys like Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett, we need those three guys to also remain to stay healthy, specifically in this as we go deeper and deeper in the playoffs. And I think those three guys as well are three guys to really look forward to in the playoffs as we get deeper and deeper, going against some of these tougher teams. We've seen some of them rise against some of these players. Some of these top teams. We've also seen some of these players fall versus some of these top teams. So I'm very interested to see how this Celtics bench can combat with some of these other obstacles. And if they do run into some obstacles, who can step up, similar to a guy like O'Shea Brissett in Game 2 versus Indiana when the Celtics needed some defensive stops and he came in and only played a handful of minutes, but was a plus 17 in that. I'm looking for a guy like that can kind of help out if needed as well.
I think that's a good point. I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I feel like we don't really have an O'Shea Brissett type guy. I feel like maybe the closest is Torrey Craig because he's a
Yeah.
guy that kind of plays a lot bigger than he is, and he can provide a lot of good energy and all of that. But I do think that's a good point either way. I didn't even I didn't even know that I thought the Celtics would win until like 5 minutes ago because I've tried very hard not to give it any thought. So I've said this before. I am incredibly superstitious. Like I hate predicting my own team to win anything, but I just feel like when I put, my thinking cap on and I look at the matchups and I look at everything that's going on, I do feel good about Boston's chances of repeating. The one major thing that I will say, and I feel like this isn't something to just gloss over, the Celtics didn't beat the Thunder this year. The Thunder were 2-0 against Boston this year. And assuming they meet in the finals, I do think that's going to be a narrative to follow. And I believe they also went 1-1 last year. So the Thunder have had Boston's number in recent history, and I do think that's something to keep in mind. But also, the Celtics were 0-2 against Denver last year, and they didn't even meet in the finals. So it's kind of a moot point until the finals actually happen. I feel good about Boston's chances against anybody. They're the defending champs for a reason, but I don't think I'm 100% confident that they're going to get it done this year. I feel good about it, but I wouldn't guarantee it or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you guys brought up some great points. I think, uh, to your point, Elie, just 0-2 against the Thunder is a little bit concerning for me. I think the Thunder do pose a lot of difficulties with this team, with their size, with their length, elite defense. They do pose some difficulties there. And then another thing I look at is Thunder are top five in pace, and the Celtics actually tend to
Mm.
struggle against teams that really like to get out and run. So that's another thing I'm a little bit hesitant about. Obviously, we know how I feel about the Thunder, though. Um, but I wouldn't gloss over them in a finals matchup, even though I'm not going to pick them to go to the finals. I wouldn't. I just don't think you can underestimate a 68 win team that's been this elite on both ends of the floor. So they're definitely a huge threat. There's no denying that. And then Bruce, I like your point about the bench guys. I think when you look at this team, I would have never said this going into the season. And as crazy as it is to think about, because Peyton Pritchard is probably going to win Sixth Man of the Year. If there's a guy I trust the most off the bench right now, it's Luke Cornett.
Yep.
Luke Cornett has been off the charts this year. I've been so impressed. The counting stats
Yeah,
don't necessarily look awesome, but his advanced stats are insane. And just watching the games, you can see his impact out there on
yeah.
really both ends of the court. He's just such an efficient lob threat, instant offense there, and he's statistically one of the best rim protectors in the league. So I feel like in a playoff series, excluding Horford, by the way, because Horford's
Yeah,
obviously
Hmm.
he's like a pseudo starter. He starts more games than he comes off
yeah,
the bench in the regular season at least. But just
yeah.
thinking about Pritchard, Hauser, and Cornette, I trust Cornette the most in the series. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Just in a playoff context, I do think Pritchard and Hauser get picked on a little bit more defensively, and we've seen Pritchard struggle against some of those top tier teams a bit. So
Hmm.
I'm a little bit hesitant there, but I do think really with their big man depth with Cornette and then Horford, the Celtics have enough, and then Hauser's certainly had his moments in the playoffs as well. I don't want to be totally disrespectful to Pritchard. He has had some solid moments too, but at the same time, I do think defensively he gets picked on quite a bit, especially in the playoffs, and then he has had some streaky tendencies against elite teams. So yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about that hot take, but I'll throw that one out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you that I think Luke Cornett is probably one of the most valuable players for the Celtics bench in the playoffs. I think you brought up some key points. Obviously, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, they get hunted a little bit on the defensive side, and we've seen that in some series, in some games versus Cleveland and versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. So I would expect them to, similarly do the same thing versus the Celtics team. But and we've seen them, struggle a little bit there. And I think Luke, especially in this series, if he's going against the Thunder or if he's going against the Lakers, he's going to have to be a pivotal piece as well. Either being a dominant big against a team that doesn't have that many in the Lakers, or versus a Thunder team that has some solid bigs in Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, and running alongside Kristaps Porzingis. And I think that's going to be some great development for him. And like you mentioned, he's one of the most undervalued, underrated bigs. The fact that he's on a veteran minimum contract and decided to come back to Boston for that cheap is absolutely insane. And I'm hoping that he didn't, outprice himself for the Celtics team for next season, because
Yeah,
if they do lose a key pivotal player like him, I'm someone that was in the Cada camp last year thinking he was going to pass Cornette, and now I'm obviously thinking that that's not the case. But if Luke Cornette does leave, that's a massive hole missing from this Celtics team too.
yeah. I agree. I said this last year. I said this last year during the playoffs, and I feel like my opinion has kind of been uh like I believe my opinion even more now. I've watched the Celtics for a very long time. I've watched them. I really, really, really started following them in 2010. I have never changed my opinion on a Celtics player the way I have with Luke Cornett. I
Mm-hmm.
used to think he was useless. Like I
Mm-hmm.
thought he was not worth having on the team. Every time he was on the court, it's like he was a negative. I just there was a time where I did not want him on the team anymore. And he's grown every single year since joining the Celtics. And now I kind of agree. I think he might be the most valuable player off that bench. Not so much valuable, but maybe the most dependable player on the bench. I feel like he's the most consistent bench player we have. And I think it kind of depends on the matchup, kind of like what Bruce was saying against a team like OKC. I think Luke Cornett will be crucial to kind of combat some of that size that Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein have. Um, I think it's going to depend. Sometimes I feel like it's going to be Peyton Pritchard's time to get his number called. Sometimes it's going to be Sam Hauser's, and sometimes it's going to be Luke Cornett to do whatever it is that he needs to do. But I feel pretty. pretty good about saying that I think Luke Cornett's probably the most dependable player that the Celtics have on the bench.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of surprised we all agree on it, but I'm definitely glad we do. I feel like I definitely agree with the point about never changing my mind on a Celtics player so much than
Yes.
Luke Cornett. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really insane, especially this year. I mean,
Hmm.
he's really been incredible. So yeah, super impressive. We're gonna wrap up in a bit, but yeah, one last question before we head out, or let's do two last questions before we head out. Favorite first round matchup? I think we might have hit on that earlier, but just to hammer home that one. And then, is there a team that you would consider maybe a sleeper team that you wouldn't be shocked if they made a finals run?
Okay. So, sleeper team that I'm going to say making the finals run is going to be the Warriors. I know we kind of looked at that team when we were discussing the Lakers, but if they're able to get by that matchup, like we were talking about, if Steph Curry is able to go on this avalanche, outscore this Lakers team, and they have the defense to kind of go up against Luka Doncic and LeBron James, I could once again see them matching up against either the Thunder team or if the Thunder team loses to a maybe not the Nuggets because the Nuggets would obviously have Nikola Jokic, but if they played a Clippers in the conference finals, I think that would be a great matchup for Golden State and it would help them as well. I think they're a team that once again we saw them just a couple years ago. A lot of people doubt on them when they won the championship versus the Boston Celtics. So I think they kind of have that
Mm.
kind of run in them once again in against going against the Rockets and the Lakers too in this Western Conference where they are a little underseeded. And for my you know I guess like favorite first round matchup, I'm gonna have to go with. I think we kind of all maybe I'm in agreement with this, but the Pacers Bucks one I think is gonna be absolutely fantastic. I think we all think it's very underrated from where they've obviously broadcasting the games, but Giannis Antetokounmpo, this little in-season rivalry, two Central Division teams really fighting to make a statement for themselves to kind of be that second team in the Central Division as well. I think is going to be great, and specifically with Damian Lillard coming back, depending on when he comes back in this series, could make it interesting. Specifically, if the Pacers are up, 3-1 in a series, and the Bucks are able to come back with Lillard's help.
Yeah, I think I agree with the Pacers and Bucks being the closest, or no, that's what I said before. It's probably my favorite series because I think it's going to be the closest one of all of them in the first round. I think if I had to make a prediction on which series is the most likely to go 7 games, it's this one. I think this is going to be a very close series. It's a divisional rivalry. I think both teams are, like I said earlier, they're both neck and neck in terms of what they bring to the table. So I'm gonna go Pacers and Bucks as my favorite first round matchup. If we're talking which team I think can which sleeper team I think can make a deep playoff run, I mean I don't know if they're a sleeper team per se. I have to still stick with the Pacers. I feel like they're very overlooked, but I also acknowledge that they're the number 4 seed. So if I have to go a little bit deeper, I'm going to give it to the Clippers because the Clippers have constantly, all season long, exceeded my expectations. I didn't think they would be in the playoff picture, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, especially before the season started with Kawhi Leonard's injury and Paul George leaving in the offseason. I just didn't have any sort of faith that they would actually make a playoff run. And then when they had that super hot start, I thought they would fizzle out, and they didn't. And now they're the number 5 seed against a Nuggets team that I think they can beat. If I had to give another team that title of which sleeper team I think could go all the way, I'll give it to the Clippers.
Yeah, I definitely like those answers. I have the same pick as Bruce for my sleeper team. I think it's the Warriors. Their experience is really
Hmm.
undeniable, and really betting against Curry in a playoff series is it's a tough one. I do think for me, it was whoever wins that matchup between the Warriors and Lakers in the second round. I was gonna pick in the finals. With all due respect to the Thunder, um,
Mm.
but yeah, I think Warriors have what it takes. I also like the Pacers and Clippers picks there. I think the Clippers Nuggets matchup is super interesting just because obviously one of them has to lose in the first round, but I wouldn't be shocked if either of those teams were able to make a deep run just with how great the Clippers have been this year, especially to close the season and Kawhi looks healthy. All signs point to him really being healthy, and we know what he can do in the playoffs. And then the
Mm.
surrounding cast is really incredible. Harden's having a great year. Avita Zubac has been having an incredible year, borderline All NBA caliber. I've been seeing him on a lot of
Yeah.
All NBA teams.
Mhm.
Protects the rim really well, so I think they check a lot of boxes of a potential title team. And then yeah, as we've discussed with the Pacers, they're definitely overlooked in the national media, and they could really make some noise in the playoffs. My favorite first round matchup is got to be the Rockets Warriors. I didn't pick it to go 7. I had the Bucks Pacers and Nuggets Clippers to go 7 as well. But with this matchup, it's just so interesting to me to see the contrast in styles with the Rockets, how poorly they shoot. The Warriors are obviously an elite 3 point shooting team, and then the experience versus youth, the Rockets size versus the Warriors lack of size. There's just so much intrigue there. And we saw a couple weeks ago they had a super competitive game. There seems to be some
Mhm.
bad blood brewing between these teams. And I mean, with Draymond Green and Dylan Brooks in the same series, something insane is bound to happen. So I think we're gonna see some of those special moments, and then I'm super curious to see uh, what Curry's able to do against Thompson, who's been one of the best defenders in the league. So there's just a lot of intrigue there. I don't know if it will go 7. I could totally see it going 7, but I think this series is bound to deliver some insane moments. And when you have Steph Curry in a playoff series, there's bound to be some crazy stuff go down. So that's why I'm
Mhm.
rocking with Warriors Rockets is my favorite series. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up there. I appreciate you guys joining me for the live stream. If you're still watching this, really appreciate you sticking with us. And yeah, I had a great time. Before we head out, do you guys just want to plug your stuff a little bit? Tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Yeah, sure. Once again, thank you, Eamon, for having an awesome discussion alongside you and Elie today. You guys can
Mhm.
find me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Bruce Velez. I make YouTube videos for Celtics and Suns Digest, and I also write for Last Word and for Bright Side of the Sun for the Suns. So you can check me out and find me all there as well.
Yeah, you can find me on social media, Twitter, Blue Sky, all of that. It's Elie Deglaoui. My name should be spelled somewhere on the screen. You can find my work, my articles on athlonsports.com, and you can find it on 8.9seconds .com for Fansided, where I write about the Indiana Pacers. So, like Bruce said, it was a pleasure being on today, and it was a really nice conversation.
Absolutely, guys. I really appreciate it. Take care, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
For sure.
Absolutely.